Great. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Melissa Wenzel. I am the Built Environment Sustainability Administrator for the state of Minnesota. I have been in this role for a little over 2 years, and I actually started in this program right before the very last Build Reuse conference. So I've been in the program for about a month and a half and went to this conference and got a really good chance to figure out how amazing the people are in this industry. And one of the reasons I'm hosting this particular meeting today is that back in the day when state employees wanted to go to conferences, we had to write it like a 5-page justification paper and explain how we're going to bring this information back to our state government agencies. And even though I was a speaker, I didn't have to pay anything, and the registration costs are relatively low compared to out-of-state travel. It just dawned on me that this should still happen, that we're sharing information. And I was so pleasantly surprised to see how many people from Minnesota showed up. Now, in 2020, the conference was supposed to be in Minnesota. That said, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what inspired everybody to attend this conference. It's because people realize the benefit of hearing from speakers from Minnesota, from getting connected to organizations across the country, across North America, and even across the world dedicated to this topic. And so I believe I know almost all of you. There's a decent number of people on this meeting. Looks like over 20 people are joining us today. And I know almost all of you, but you don't know each other, and I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable being the only person who knows you all. So there's even more, obviously, who attended the conference that I don't know about or who couldn't make it today. But I still wanted a chance for us to get together and share what we learned, share what great things we did. I promise you I will not be dancing at this meeting today. No dancing. If you watched the end of the conference, you might have seen me dance badly. I will not be doing that today. At least not without request or perhaps donations to a nonprofit. So anyways, enough about that. And so this meeting is about sharing as much as it is about engaging. And so I'd love for folks to introduce themselves. What organization or entity are they connected to? And what brings you here today? What makes you connected to the built environment? And it can be personal or professional or both or some other reason. And let's see. I will see in the meeting, see if I can copy paste a list. Maybe we can go through it one by one. I'm going to start with Liz. Her actual camera is the top of my screen. So why don't you go ahead, Liz, and we can start with popcorning it and see where we go.
Sounds good. Thank you, Melissa. Hi, Liz Kitschke at the Center for Sustainable Building Research at the University of Minnesota. I primarily work on the B3 and SB 2030 programs for the state, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. And specifically, I'm working on the materials and waste guidelines right now. So lots of interests in this topic. And I see Olivia is here, so I'll throw it over to her. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Melissa, for setting this up. I'm Olivia Cashman. I'm with Hennepin County Environment and Energy, and I run our deconstruction grant program. Have been involved with salvage and C&D waste work for about 2 years, and it's really exciting to connect with folks from Build Reuse, and then also here in the Twin Cities, and excited to learn more about folks in other parts of Minnesota who maybe have not met before. So I will popcorn it to Natalie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Hennigan, and I work for Rethos, which is a regional nonprofit organization that helps people take care of old buildings. And a lot of my job is about teaching homeowners and property owners how to take care of buildings that already exist, or to rehab them or repurpose them somehow. And in the past few years, we have added curriculum and opportunities for folks to learn about salvaging materials and reusing materials when buildings can no longer stay standing. So coming out of that interest, I joined the board of Build Reuse earlier this year and sat on the conference committee for this virtual conference. So we'll definitely be taking back any feedback or suggestions you have to the committee and to the full board. So let's see, I'll pass it to Sandy.
I think you're on mute, Sandy.
I'm famous for that. Sorry. Sandy Gunderson from Becker County. We're pretty new to the reuse world. We started a waste diversion program at the Becker County Solid Waste Transfer Station. And since last September, we've diverted over 25 ton and looking forward to continuing that program and expanding that program in Becker County. And this slide is actually our Green Corps member this year working with our reuse program. This is Lisa. So we're glad to have her here.
I figured it was.
Yes, go to, golly, I'm not sure. Let's see.
And I can start calling on people. I am making a list of people.
Yeah. How about Emily?
So
I'm gonna just chat mine, Melissa. I think you're muted now, Melissa.
I don't normally do that. Yes. So Emily is got a partner in the household who's doing interviews a couple feet away from her, so she put her info in chat. So how about Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt Roan in Northfield, Minnesota. I'm a citizen volunteer for our climate action plan and for the materials and waste work group. And we're in the midst of writing a zero waste plan when St. Olaf College started tearing down buildings to build new housing. And so I partnered with a professor up there to get some academic civic engagement students, and we ended up presenting at the conference about academic civic engagement usage in this.
Cool. Ellie.
I'm Ellie Strunk. I'm a Green Corps member. I'm stationed at St. John's, St. Ben's in their waste management. I had this pop up on my email and I accepted it and jumped on. So I don't know.
Welcome. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I am also a Green Corps member. I'm with Get the Lead Out, which is a program as part of Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I actually come from about 10 years plus maybe in property management. And so building and construction and renovation has always been super, super interesting to me, and always a wonder as to why there is so much waste connected when materials leave the building. How much of it can be reused is always my first question. And yeah, I love it. I'm excited to hear what everybody thought of the conference. I thought it was incredible. We'll pass it to Melissa. You'll have to help me out.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. Yes. How about Philson?
Good morning, folks. My name is Philson Ibrahim, and I am from Ramsey County. I work with our cities, and I'm mainly involved in recycling for our cities, but I really am trying to get them interested in other aspects, and reuse is one of those. And I will, Molly. We'll send it to Molly.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Molly Flynn, also with Ramsey County. I'm primarily in the solid and hazardous waste compliance group as a regulator, and have been working a lot with our pre-demolition program on how we can integrate more reuse and deconstruction into what we advocate for, and resources we can develop. So just kind of working on that for the last 2 years, and we just launched our deconstruction grant program with the help of a lot of people. I'm also a former Benny, so excited to hear that Ellie is on here, and maybe we can connect sometime. But other than that, yeah, we're just working on a lot of outreach right now and figuring out how to implement the deconstruction grant program and looking at kind of our internal stuff. So looking at our contracts and what we can do internally too. So that's kind of what drew me to the conference too. And I have lost track of who's spoken, so
I can take over on that altogether. How about Claire?
Hi, yeah. My name is Claire. I'm a Green Corps member with Solid Waste and Recycling in Minneapolis. So I'm working with Kelly Kish, who's on the phone currently. Hopefully you can't hear her, but yeah, my work plan is not super directly tied to deconstruction and reuse. I'm working more on like organics and multifamily recycling. So I kind of just attended out of interest because it was affordable to attend as a Green Corps member, which was awesome. But I did find it incredibly eye-opening, and there is potentially some work I'll be doing down the road in the spring. So I'm still kind of here to, I don't know, stay tuned in. It's really informative and important work that's happening. So yeah, kind of along for the ride.
Welcome. Looking at the list, Kathy Osborne.
Okay, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Kathy Osborne, I'm with Atomic Recycling. We're a construction and demolition hauling company, and then we have a recycling facility in Minneapolis. We sort out materials that come in from the dumpsters. So it's basically some sites do source separating at facilities, and we might get a dumpster full of metal, and that might just go directly to a Northern Metal or some other metal recycling. But most of our dumpsters have all the material that came from the construction project, and then we have a sorting facility that actually pulls out, whether it's mechanically or with people sorting out material, so that we can recycle as much as we can. And on all of these meetings, I always try to push out there that markets. That's the big key for us, because we can sort things forever, but if there's no place to send it to, then it doesn't help us. So I'm just been involved with the program with Melissa's, looking at how to increase C&D recycling. And I thought I'd just listen. I did not attend the conference, so I wanted to hear all about it.
I can't bike or drive by an atomic recycling bin without smiling. And the most recent one was yesterday downtown St. Paul. I biked by it and I smiled. And nobody.
We have a lot of dumpsters.
Yeah, they represent something pretty cool to me. So, Kathy, Victor.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Victor Kraus. I'm up in Duluth, where we are not getting snow yet, but I hear it's coming this week. And I have been involved with building deconstruction and material reuse for probably the past 8 years. I'm primarily involved with Better Futures in Minneapolis and trying to assist them with figuring out what to do with materials they were harvesting from deconstruction. In our most recent grant that we are working on getting things started with will be assisting with the folks in Becker County to do more material harvesting and also more material reuse with what they're pulling out. We also hope to expand that type of operation to different parts of outstate Minnesota as part of this grant. So I've been involved with the build reuse folks here for probably the past 6 or 8 years. There was talk at one point of us helping with Better Futures to do a lot of the training for deconstruction in our area. And those things are kind of still out in the far wing, but something we are interested in here at the NRRI is helping to assist with that material reuse and determining what things can be made into or turned into, find other areas for some of those difficult to reuse materials to be reprocessed and repurposed into. So looking forward to hearing what everybody thought about the big meeting and share ideas and maybe connect with some folks across the state for future opportunities.
Thanks. Hazy, is that how you pronounce your first name?
Yes, that's correct. So hi everyone, I'm Paisley and I'm also a Green Corps member and I'm stationed at the City of Hopkins. So I couldn't make it to the conference, but I've always been interested in reducing waste, be it like organics or municipal, and that's just part of my work plan here as well. But I realize I don't know enough about this at all, like just how to reuse and deconstruction in general. So I'm here just to learn more about it.
Great. Peter, are you on and able to talk?
Yeah, I am. Peter Sandai with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. One of my primary roles is working on the Metro Policy Plan for solid waste. And I wasn't able to attend the conference, but I felt with my role in developing that plan that it was important for me to listen in on this conversation. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Peter. I'm glad you're here. Mikey.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Zhang. I'm with the NPCA. I wasn't at the last conference, but I was there in 2019 conference. I'm interested to learn what everyone does and here to be a support group for each and every one of you.
Cool. Kelly Fisher.
Hi, my name is Kelly Fisher. I'm the Outreach and Education Coordinator at Rethos, same place that Natalie is also at. And as Natalie described, we work on helping people reuse and restore old buildings. So I have a hand in helping with our classes, but also in our Minnesota Main Streets program, which helps downtown communities utilize their downtowns to their best ability. My interest in build reuse, kind of the first intro I had was the Bringing Down the House webinar, which happened a few weeks ago, which Melissa was part of, featured as a talker there. So it was just a really cool intro for me into what deconstruction really is, and then how the conference fit into that. And I just started this position a couple months ago, but there are a lot of NPCA people on the call, and I just want to say I came from the NPCA just a couple months ago, so it's awesome to see some somewhat familiar faces.
Excellent. Great. Kelly Kish, if you're able to talk.
Hi, everybody. Kelly Kish with the City of Minneapolis, recycling coordinator. I also was unable to attend the conference, so I'm really excited to hear about the insights and all of the great takeaways that all of you who were able to participate had. Participated in the Sustainable Building Material Work Group for the past couple of years, and excited to continue efforts on that here coming up. Our zero waste plan has a building material or construction and demolition entire section to it. And while we haven't made some progress there since its adoption, there are continuing efforts to continue to increase diversion and recycling of building materials here in the city. So excited to learn from everybody here today.
Excellent. Anybody I haven't called on yet? I think I have everybody. 19 people, 18. Oh, okay, great. Well, I almost wish I had done a brief overview about the built environment. I'll just do a quick brief primer. We generate twice as much C&D debris nationwide as we do municipal solid waste. And that has been an EPA fact year after year after year. And here in Minnesota and across the country, there's not as much incentive on how to get those materials to not go to landfills. So it's a really, really big problem that we really need to address, especially if we really want to address climate change. And so here in Minnesota, there were a couple of partial positions at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency where staff left for different opportunities. And our agency decided to create one full FTE, a full-time equivalent to that, and that's my role. And You know, obviously you all know how challenging it's been during the pandemic, but to try to ask the legislature for funding to incentivize some ideas or initiatives, or to ask for new requirements, neither are particularly palatable. So a lot of what we're doing here at the Pollution Control Agency is building relationships, supporting the organizations and local government that are or at least want to lead the charge or are leading the charge. And we can justify our activities at the statewide level once we see some things happen at the local level. And I know that that goes both ways, that some people would benefit from having the state lead the charge. So there's a little bit of push and pull, give and take on that. And I'm committed to doing what we can at the state level, as well as helping you all at the local level. So there were 3 formal presentations given from Minnesota speakers, and Kathy, excuse me, Sandy, if you're still on, do you have like 2 sentences that you want to cover? I didn't prompt anybody, by the way, so I can certainly do this. But Sandy, in your own words, do you want to talk about your diversion program?
Sure. We started a project last September with Better Futures Minnesota and Minnesota Green Corps, and we diverted waste from the waste stream, and started out, like I said, in September of last year, and it went through July of this year, and we diverted about 12 ton in that time frame. And our Minnesota Better Futures Minnesota person graduated out of the program in July, and so we've been doing it by ourselves since July with Minnesota Green Corps. And then hopefully soon we'll be getting the Better Futures person here, and we'll continue diverting. And from July to October, we diverted 13 tons. And we went from having last fall, we had 4 different sales from fall to February. Or excuse me, from September to February, we had 4 different sale days, like events. And we've now gone to, since June, we've gone to 1.5 days a week. So we're open all day Wednesday and half a day Thursday. It's just been a great success. And we divert it out of the waste stream as the product comes in. So someone pays for disposal, and then we divert it out of the waste stream. Our next goal is to get the product out before it hits the transfer station. So we're working on that.
So it's a unique model where they get paid twice.
Mm-hmm. We charge. So we average between $300 and $500 a week on the product coming in.
That's pretty cool. So they get paid at the tipping fee, but also when they sell these materials. And my bad left-handed handwriting at the bottom, it took them a good, let's see, September to June, like 7 months to divert 12 tons, but that was one event every 2 months. Then at that point, they realized that this was going to be sustainable. And do we have an echo back and forth? And I'll stop in just a second. But then once they went to 1.5 days a week, they very quickly diverted that much and more in a much, much shorter period of time. Go ahead, Sandy, if there's anything else.
I was just going to say it's been very well received by the community, and we've had folks saying, where can I donate? And so we're not quite there yet, but I just keep telling folks, we'll get there. And the program is ever evolving, so just hang in there. And people are loving it. One of the questions at the national conference was, are some of the reuse basically thrift stores in the community, do they consider us competition? And they really don't. They consider us a resource, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was exchanging posts with one of the most frequent buyer from Becker County, Patina White, and online, or they have a brick and mortar place, but also sell stuff online, or at least showcase stuff online. They buy items from Becker County and then upcycle it and sell it at their store. So they're pretty thrilled that I'm like, hey, I'm really envious of you, and I wish you were in my community, but you're too far away. They loved that. Any quick questions for Sandy? Comments? Feel free to put them in chat or take yourself off mute. I'm not sure why Sandy and I are having reverb feedback and just the 2 of us.
Can we get information on this
Absolutely.
by your website or something?
Yes, in fact, as I was setting up this meeting today, the Gov Delivery newsletter that we send out once a month is talking about it a little bit. We're actually going to be having a quarterly meeting where we're going to be highlighting this in more detail, but I'm happy to send the presentation that Sandy and I did to you all. And I'll throw in the link for you to sign up for Gov Delivery. Just now, but yes, I can. I think I have that as Google Drive. So when I take a break of speaking, I'll go find that for you. In the meantime, if you want to sign up to receive updates, we just sent our last newsletter out about 20 minutes ago, and you're welcome to contact Sandy.
I just have to add, I'm really excited. Sandy's going to be joining our board in the new year. We just had our elections wrapped up, so we are very excited to have her expertise joining our leadership and governance.
That is wonderful. That is fantastic. I felt like I was talking Sandy into presenting at the Build Reuse conference, and I assured her, I'll do the presentation slides, I'll do, you know, the test runs, I'll schedule those meetings. She really got into it, and she attended a number of the sessions, and I think a lot of us realize how relatable our work is. Even if our core job is not exactly the built environment, you know, it's just like anything related to waste reduction and recycling. It fits together, and we're part of the same community. So, well, Matt, you spoke up. I actually was hoping that you could also speak next about, and I have not had a chance to see this. So please go ahead and share a little bit more about what you spoke about at the conference.
Okay, well, St. Olaf College was tearing down all these buildings for this housing project, and we knew that they were using deconstructive techniques. And so we teamed up with a course taught at St. Olaf Environmental Studies that has an academic civic engagement component in it. So it was actually 2 semesters, I think 3 different offerings of the course. So we had different teams. And what I was presenting on, and my colleague Paul Jackson, and it's actually Rethos people who said, please, won't you submit a proposal, was the value of being able to use academic civic engagement. Students were all short of staff, and while this isn't a lot of staffing, you can capture students who will do research, who will create social media things, depending on how the whole situation is set up. So it's helpful in that way. We talked about some of the pitfalls as well as some of the you know, success and value of the shared, one of the really remarkable papers that one of the student groups did. And it's a great thing for the students to really get hands-on, real-world learning in this context. I might add that I had no other reason for attending this. And so I started sitting in on other sessions, and I was expecting not to sit in on more, but they were so remarkably good. I was learning so much of value to our city that I attended the whole thing.
I don't know about anybody else, but it's kind of hard not to get engaged, especially when there are people that are dealing with real life challenges and still having really good successes. So I'd been in this program maybe 3 months when we first heard about the plan to demolish these buildings on St. Olaf College. So we have a, at the time she's a supervisor and she's now an assistant director. We had both a staff member as well as a colleague of mine who went to St. Olaf, both of them letting us know about these buildings being demolished. That makes sense too about Rethos having staff too that came from St. Olaf, and people were really bothered that these buildings were going to come down because they probably had some life in them. Could they be moved? Things like that. And so we worked with students, faculty, staff, residents, NPCA staff, and others to see if there's a way that we could save these buildings. And just like anything else, it's really difficult to convince somebody else to do what we want but part of it is we don't know why they're saying what they do. So we have to learn more about their why. And kind of understanding the bigger picture makes us more relatable, more realistic, more pragmatic. But it really led to some huge engagement opportunities within the city and within the campus itself. And those are the lessons learned or the benefits that happen. Did we still want to save these buildings? Sure. Could we? No, not unless we're going to buy them and move them. We're not going to do that. But we were able to connect more people to this topic in this area simply because a couple people raised a concern saying, I don't like what I'm seeing or what I'm about to see. And so, I don't know what else to say. It takes situations like this to lead to bigger changes, more systemic changes.
I would add that the college also actually fudged in the end on what they initially promised. And the students picked up on that, and it made them more activist on this whole thing and actually pushed the college to not fudge as much as they were going to there towards the end.
Yeah, to their credit, to the college's credit, when nobody's paying attention, it's easy to kind of gloss over and be like, okay, well, we need housing. Nobody can disagree with that. But when you have people really looking at the what and the why, and they're going to school there, they will not let this happen without, full disclosure. So I didn't know that. So thanks for sharing. Any questions for Matt? Thanks, Matt. I did throw into chat the Becker County version presentation. So we did create it from Google, or we did create a copy from Google Slides. So feel free to access that. Let Sandy know if you have any more questions. We do think it's extremely scalable across the country, big and small. So I was only prepared to speak about that singular topic with Sandy. And then all of a sudden, a couple people are like, hey, Melissa, you seem to care about something. Do you want to co-present with us? And then I ended up co-leading 2 presentations. So I spoke every single day of the conference. At the 2019 conference, there was the same keynote speaker who spoke in 2021, Ilma from the Netherlands. She was talking about, she talked about a lot of things, but the one thing that I remember most succinctly was that in the Netherlands, their architects created a tool to help them source used building materials that they could use in their projects. And the idea of a mapping system has been, for most of you who know me, something I've been borderline slightly obsessed with. And try to find funding and opportunities and organizations that might pick it up, because across the world, across the country, across Minnesota, we have the same questions coming up. Where can I donate materials? Where can I source materials? Supply and demand of materials, of workers, all of those simultaneously are really important. And I had to put my build reuse work on hold. A few of you also had to be redeployed to COVID-related work, and I got brought into Department of Health, and I was there for 7 months working on the pandemic response. But I was still attending some webinars. I was working just a little bit at the MPCA, and I heard 2 separate webinars in a fairly short period of time about mapping systems. And I'm like, that's back on the table? What? Okay, cool, great. What's going on here? Well, it turned out 2 separate organizations were creating basically the same tool. And at the point that I saw the second presentation and I'm hearing about these maps and matrices and reuse resources, I reached out to both of them and I said, are you 2 aware of each other? They had kind of heard about each other, but I really felt strongly about these tools being beneficial, but also just having one tool. And so over the last 3 or 4 months, we've been meeting the group of us to talk about these mapping tools and what would they consist of. Ideally, I'd still like to have like a material mapping system, but what you need to start with is a resource mapping system. And so the organizations were creating basically freeware, if you're familiar with that term, a no-cost system that anyone anywhere could use. And it was also user-friendly, and it was also useful. And some of the tools out there don't tend to have all of those conditions met. So I was really excited about it. Got tentative support from our agency staff. And, you know, I was only giving feedback. That was really only my role, but they recognized how here in Minnesota, how much we could benefit from this. And this is a screenshot when I was in testing mode and I was uploading a couple dozen organizations into the system. So there were no dots in Minnesota until I created it. It's still in draft form, so you can't find this. But you can see in the legend that we have consulting services, deconstruction, government, reuse, manufacturing, recycling, and so on, and they can fit in multiple categories. I don't know if this is the final legend, by the way, but I don't think it is. But it gives you an understanding of what organizations can be listed. And I've offered to be the person in Minnesota to make sure that the list is current and the companies or organizations listed are valid. But I was just so pleased that not only did these two organizations agree that this is a beneficial tool, they recognized quickly how even just one state would utilize this tool really, really quickly. So we gave two presentations at the workshop, at the conference, about this tool. And the second one was more interactive so that we could get people to start thinking about who would you add to the list? Who should not be on the list as far as categories go? What do you need the tool to do for you to use it and stuff like that? So we had a lot of people who are like, well, have you marketed it to this group? Have you showcased it to that group? We're like, no, you're the first people seeing this ever, besides Melissa. So we know that people are impatient to use the tool, and that demonstrated to us that it'll very likely be highly used. So I will be reaching out to, well, pretty much anybody in Minnesota connected to this industry after I upload to the official tool the list of organizations that I think should be listed. I'm getting training on Friday on how to do it in batch, so I don't have to just type in one organization at a time. And entities can edit their own information if they want. There are some behind the scenes safeguards so that, maybe a competitor doesn't delete a whole bunch of, so there's still some behind the scenes checks, but still a work in progress. The organizations are hoping to launch this by the end of the year, and it'll be in that GovDeliver newsletter, so feel free to sign up for updates. Any questions? Would you use it? Would you list your organization or companies and organizations in your community? Yeah, thumbs up. Cool. Excellent. Yay. I will too. A pleasant surprise. And by the way, the people who are speaking today, I didn't script anybody, but it turns out that there's, well, I knew that there's always awards for this particular conference, even if this is only my second year attending. I could have included a shorter file, but I just created this an hour ago. It is such a pleasure for me to also be able to say that Hennepin County is now nationally award winning, that they won the Deconstructor of the Year. And I remember messaging Olivia saying, I didn't know that you were nominated. And she said the same thing. We both went to the list to go fill out the organizations we wanted to nominate and happened to see Hennepin County on the list. So Olivia, if you have any words to say, congratulations.
I'm muted. Thanks for sharing that, Melissa. Yeah, we're super excited about this. Like Melissa said, I went to vote and I didn't realize we were nominated, so it was such an honor to be among other folks in the deconstruction industry, especially within build reuse. But yeah, we are just excited about other opportunities to continue to promote deconstruction, maybe revamping our grant program to expand scope of projects. But yeah, I think it's a testament to all the partnerships here in Minnesota for folks actually doing the deconstruction, partners at the state and other counties, and groups like Reuse Minnesota. So yeah, thank you all for the partnerships and working together with us.
Yeah, two things I'll say about that is right when this program launched, the deconstruction grant program, there is a woman in the appraisal, the building material management appraisal world, who had said at that time, in her roughly 20 years in the industry, she was not aware of a single entity providing a grant opportunity like this that wasn't coupled with an actual requirement. And so, you know, whether or not that's actually true, there could be some out there that we don't know of, but to know that it was one of the first in the nation where funding was provided when a requirement was not in place. And Molly mentioned this, and if you missed it, the second point I want to make is that Ramsey County is the second county in Minnesota that is now offering deconstruction grants. And I did just feature it in the newsletter that I sent out just right before this meeting. And I am very, very excited about that particular development. So I know that other counties are watching. Now we have other entities around the nation watching. And so we might see some pretty rapid movement on that. And Minnesota MPCA will continue to promote both of those programs, and other counties, if they join on board too, we'll share those too. Okay, back to presentation. Okay, sorry. All right, so obviously we weren't going to take up the whole meeting with just 3 or 4 programs. This is our turn, your turn to talk. So what did you see? What did you like? Are there things you didn't like? You know, what do you want to see that you saw going on? And be as open, be as thoughtful, recognize that about a third of the people weren't able to participate. So feel free to kind of maybe give a summary of something that you saw that you liked. This is free form, so nobody's going to get called on, but if people would like to speak up, I have 1 or 2, but I'd love to hear from you all first.
So I think this was the Walter Kane presentation that I saw, that he had just loads of slides of just beautiful like architecturally artistic buildings that had used like reused materials only, or mostly reused material, and it was just like really stunning and also looked really expensive. And like it would just be, you know, absolutely a dream to live or even visit one of these buildings. And so I asked this, and then my Zoom cut out. I asked what he thought of all of the things, because there were so many different projects that he was reporting on, which of them felt like the most scalable, which was the most like reusable idea. Like, where could you replicate this and start making it like more and more affordable, because it's just, you know, easier to get the materials, or you know where to, like, it was easy to make happen, or what were the, you know, what made it all work together. And then my Zoom cut out, so I couldn't hear his whole answer. But at the end of the day, I don't know that there really is a good answer until we have this list up and running.
Yeah, I had put in chat that I have a copy of the slides, and I realized I need to ask permission to get it. So I have a link that does not yet work. So I'll be sure to share those. But you can see the answer. You can watch the recording. I'm going to definitely be rewatching that one myself. So, and I might have shared it already, but I'm going to share the link for everybody for where you can access the presentations, especially those that couldn't make it. They're not password protected, so.
I would definitely recommend that one, and I haven't gotten that far down the list yet. I've been watching the ones that I haven't seen first.
Unfortunately, the award-winning Hennepin County, they didn't share that particular link. I was going to share that myself, but in this meeting. But anyway. That was a good one, and I'll try to remember to share that those slides. I did reach out to Walter, and he said, "Here are my slides. Happy for you and your colleagues in Minnesota to use them however you like. I got most of the pictures from the websites I listed on the last slide. I'd recommend visiting those sites to get more info on individual projects, and look up credits, especially if you're using them for other presentations. Not sure what's required when you use others' photos, so I just listed the websites and referenced them. So I'll request access to those, and depending on timing, we'll share shortly. Others?
One that I would recommend is Dave Bennick's Reuse Innovation Center, The Future of Reuse. He's just a remarkable person. I could tell the others kind of regarded him as a god who just, here's a problem, let's tackle it, and he comes up with solutions. So he goes out and consults with folks, but he has this incredible reuse center in Portland, Oregon that he's created. He's turned deconstruction down from a 3-week process to a 3-day process. So one of the things he and the other session, San Antonio, they really concentrated on the issue of costs and how that frightens people away from deconstruction, but how cost tends to be badly added up. And they found ways to add up the real cost of demolishing and throwing stuff away versus deconstructing them. And then he's come up with all sorts of solutions for reuse center and such to make things available and do it at a low cost. So I would recommend that one. And I forget what the San Antonio, but they also had written, I believe, a paper which they made available a couple of years ago on cataloging costs and talking about it in a detailed way. One of the things people should know, on the site itself, we were able to put material on the site. So I think you can get not only the presentations, but also any additional material that people put on their site.
That's true for those that registered. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Access to SCUD, they can do that. But I threw his information. I actually told him that he was the first person I saw at the 2019 conference. So there was some pre-conference gatherings, and I was running a little late, and I walk in and felt a little like unsure of myself. New situation for me, new city, and just a very welcoming group. And I still utilize his knowledge on a very, very regular basis, especially if there are deconstruction projects that cannot be performed in Minnesota, or there are other organizations that can. And he does cite that up to 20 jobs can come out of a deconstruction project versus just a couple for demolition. So he has a pretty strong Facebook presence too, and I love seeing what he does and what he and his crew can do. So Dave Bennick out of Reuse Consulting. So he's a private consultant at this point, but his goal is to train others, and he can be credited with training hundreds of people who deconstruct all over the nation. Okay. Others? Do people want to even just talk about some of the presentations they saw, not necessarily things that they liked, but just stuff they learned?
Yeah, I know the Walter Kane presentation about the architecture projects was already mentioned, but yeah, that one really sticks out for me as a highlight. I think the whole time, like, I just had like my jaws dropped because the projects he featured were so cool, and I'm excited to look back at some of the slides. But on a similar note, another presentation was how architects and project partners can drive reuse. And there were 2 case studies based out of Indianapolis, and those were interesting as well, just kind of dig more at the project level of how reuse was incorporated and how architects kind of were driving the change for those examples. And then Another one that I thought was really interesting was the Resourceful Maine. They had a research study funded from the National Science Foundation all about the social value of reuse, and had some really cool examples of like keeping materials local and how just those different value chains can align. So that one, I think Melissa, you were in that one as well, but I thought that was cool too.
I joined kind of later. I had to leave early. I can't remember which. And I know I met Leslie virtually about a month before the conference, and I've known Jessica since the last one. So I do want, Michael's story is great too. So wonderful people who are dedicated to this. So I love case studies, and that's one thing that for appraising is, you know, without a case study, it can be a little legally and jargony and IRS and tax forms that. So I'm definitely going to go back because I missed most of that. So there's the appraisals, deconstruction, the Mann case. What was the Mann case? That's how little I was participating.
So from my notes, the two case studies, one was Pamela Francis from Scott Design, and then actually I don't think I have the other one. So I'll have to go back to the notes, but I think they're both based out of Indianapolis.
Watching it. How about others?
I guess just a general comment from the conference. A lot of times I'm looking at this work pretty narrowly, and I know we have a problem to solve with our waste diversion, but this kind of touches like different sessions. If you weren't able to catch them, just like throughout, kind of brings together a lot of the different audiences that are behind this work, which I thought was really cool. There's people coming at this from, you know, the architects who are on the cutting edge of design, and it's really like inspirational to see maybe a glimpse in the future where we're not really dealing with this problem of waste, and we can kind of see like an idea of something like more sustainable, more circular, and it's not so much we're kind of dealing with the aftermath of finding markets for things people are seeing as waste. So that's kind of encouraging for me to think about a little bit more, and I think gives us a little bit more ideas of future goals for us as what we can do in the county, or just as at the citizen level of kind of our goals and what we're thinking of next. So I thought that was really cool. There's obviously a lot of people from government that kind of created a community. I guess we have very small teams that are working on this, I feel like individually, but just hearing from other people that are maybe working on similar things was really helpful to just kind of know that others are having the same challenges or approaching things differently. So I like that too. Yeah, I guess I don't really have any in particular to draw your attention to, but just overall a really positive, if you're able to catch any of them, especially the main presenters, the keynotes, I think were inspirational too.
Yeah, I was kind of humbled when some of the keynotes were attending some of our sessions. And it wasn't all rosy. So one presentation that I was able to participate in, and I'm bad about remembering specifics. I joke that I can't even quote myself or paraphrase myself. But Ted from the Bay Area, the Reuse People, a company that does deconstruction in the Bay Area, was talking about the challenges and opportunities related to various ordinances across the nation. And I have this really strong memory of tension. So not everybody agreed with what he was saying, or some people were saying, well, you see that as a problem, I see that as a solution. So there was a little bit of tension, and I think that's extremely healthy. One, not everyone agrees with singular approaches to how to solve these problems. And I've heard of a couple ordinances that people are like, oh, they're fantastic. And then 5 minutes later, I'll be like, don't do what that city did, you know? And so here in Minnesota, we are trying to be holistic with how we approach where we're going, and that does mean that change is going to be a little slower. But I think, you know, taking small successes and applying it or encouraging it and listening to what is happening elsewhere is really going to pay off in the long run for us in Minnesota. We still have a lot of naysayers, a lot of people who are like, not a priority. You shouldn't be doing this. It's not worth it. It's not worth the time and money, coupled with, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you going faster? And, you know, California's had some of these requirements on the books for a couple decades, and we really don't. So I think in some ways we're making incredible progress, but we're going to have tension here in Minnesota, hence why we're building up the network and the support now. Anybody else attend that one?
Yeah, I attended that one as well, Melissa, and yeah, I feel like with the ordinance conversation, it's this challenge of like knowing when a community is ready for an ordinance, but also like you're maybe never gonna be ready, and so you kind of just have to have the timing right to push something through. And so yeah, there's not a whole lot of clarity on that. Maybe just like some parameters that could help guide the conversation. So yeah, I noticed the tension there as well, and I think warranted for the topic.
It was also one of the most attended sessions too, if I remember correctly too. So I mean, it's good when people can engage with one another. It's a sign of some level of success. Well, for those that saw presentations or those that are hearing it for the first time, particularly the information from Minnesota, are there things that we want in Minnesota that we've seen in other entities? What do you want to see changed related to the built environment here in Minnesota? And it doesn't have to necessarily be anything where like, now you're in charge, you get to go run that. What do you want to see? Like, I want higher landfill tipping fees. I want to see more diversion programs like Becker County. I want Ramsey County to do that. No, there's a bunch of Ramsey County employees on the phone. That's me personally saying that, not Melissa, the MPCA employee. Okay, this is awkward. Higher landfill tipping fees may actually happen without us doing much. Thanks. We are working on rewriting landfill rules, and it is fairly likely that the new construction demolition landfill rules will include a liner or something that proves that materials will not leach into the ground or groundwater, if not a liner. If there's enough certain material in the whatever, it's not a it's not a done deal. The rules haven't even been written, let alone drafted and out for public comment. But that may naturally happen. It's may. I'm not making any promises. I know this is being recorded, so I'll say the word again, may. So. Philson, did you want to say something in your response?
No, I was just reading my notes, and I just things that I would like to see. I think it's before attending this conference, I just didn't realize how impactful reuse can be with the climate change situation. And then, like after attending it and listening to folks talk about how reuse, even just like rethinking what we make for them to really just be in loop forever. I think there's an architect, she mentioned that they really can reuse a lot of doors, a lot of wooden doors. They can only use it like a few times. And then having a way to have like metal doors or some kind of other doors that aren't really landfilled. And then just really even rethinking about how we build and how we can build like Lego blocks where we can take things apart easier. It's just a lot of it was just I love the climate action, climate crisis connection to what folks were saying.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I didn't get to see Andrew Ellsworth.
And I think that's lost. Oh, no, I was just saying, I think that's for a lot of us, like a lot of like recycling, and I feel like it's just a smaller world that we live in, but thinking broadly how like everything is connected, that was helpful for me to hear.
It's really great to hear. Yeah, Andrew Ellsworth with Doors Unhinged, that's all they do is they salvage and sell doors, and they found a niche where that's enough for them to do. There's so many great doors that are not being reused, and you know, just how you can rethink an entire world just based on a door. Design for the environment is still a challenge, and we don't necessarily have a green building specialist at the MPCA any longer, but there's a lot of things we can do to try to, encourage that reuse. And, the deconstruction grant obviously is a big start. But we're all going to have to rethink, in terms of building for design, the Lego concept. I really like that. And I'm hearing that a lot more of the home construction is actually happening in the factory. So the pieces are delivered in parts and there's a lot less waste and it's a lot more efficient. And so there's a lot of benefits from a number of different perspectives that support a more sustainable building system, at least for houses. So I've not yet personally seen any of that, but I hear it's happening across the nation. And with wood prices being so expensive, I think anywhere you can cut waste and maximize efforts, so what if the sustainability side is not maybe the #1 goal? Doesn't matter. It's still happening. It's still part of the solution. So, and in fact, I think if other entities did it for cost savings or maybe labor friendly, easier to construct and things like that, and you just happen to save resources, that's not a bad thing ever to have that just naturally or normally be included. I was gonna say something. There's been some talks of, and I don't think he could join us today, but Pete O'Keefe, formerly from Habitat for Humanity Restores, has seen demonstrations of instead of a household hazardous waste reuse shed or hazardous materials reuse, can there be basic building materials that have a place that people can drop off and people can take away? It's kind of like what Becker County does, but those are only ending up at the landfill. They're not necessarily being initiated as collection. That's kind of what Sandy was talking about for a next step. And if Emily were on the call, she within St. Louis Park and Hennepin County in her former role, they actually did have a building material drop-off day where all the materials did benefit Better Futures. And Olivia, I'm seeing you nod your head. I don't know if you were physically present at any of those activities or that event, but I know that they had some really great successes, materials diverted, and they've done a video game media swap or other types of swaps. So I know that they've done other things, but I loved that building material, I don't know, donation day?
Yeah, it was called, I think, Building Material Donation Days, and they had 2 separate days for it and partnered with the cities of Hopkins and Golden Valley as well. Edina might have been involved too, but this was back in fall of 2019. We have both Habitat for Humanity, Restore, and Better Futures were partners, so residents could come drop off materials, and then Habitat and Better Futures kind of had scoped out what each of them would take. And we were looking at helping run that out in 2020, and then COVID hit, and I'd love to see it happen again and be partners with other cities doing it too. But yeah, it was a very successful event and gave residents an easy way to drop items off.
I don't know if that's something that can happen in other counties or if there would be a team effort or a multi-county effort, but I think I could find people in multiple communities to help with that.
Yeah, I just maybe to mention, we did try that the last year and a half. It just in-person events haven't panned out as much as we had anticipated, and just kind of be mindful of that, and also the city's capacity. They're similar to us at the county, being pulled many different directions. So we're hopeful, even a lot of Philson's engagement too at the county with the cities. There's discussions of maybe hopefully next year being a little bit more successful with that. But yeah, definitely looking at those other events that Hennepin County held in 2019 and working with, the similar vendors. The reuse retailers seem to be really enthusiastic about being part of those events. So if we can just get a city that has the capacity, kind of take that on, to add that component, we're hopeful that maybe next year we could do that too.
Very, very good point. I mean, I certainly don't mean to make it sound as easy as I'm describing it to have happen. And so much work does go into it. And I certainly know that it's resource intensive. So, you know, I'm happy to know that more and more counties are having like a recycling composting ambassador program. And, you know, there may be some options there. Not something easy to start, particularly while we're still having a pandemic. No joke. I helped out with some of the waste drop-off days, and even those weren't particularly easy either. So for sure, it takes a community to be able to have something like that happen. So other things. Oh, and before I forget, for those that are still on the call, are people who can attend our December 7th quarterly meeting, our next Built Environment quarterly meeting, are people willing to report out on a couple of these highlights, basically an abbreviated version of today's meeting within like 15-20 minutes total at the next Built Environment meeting? Is that something for participants who attended might be able to help out with? Cool. I see Matt. Some of our regulars who attend, like Olivia, Sandy, Kelly, Molly, folks willing to co-present.
Definitely happy to share anything from Build Reuse's perspective too, Melissa.
Great, great, great. Fantastic. I'll be in touch. I'll be finalizing that agenda a bit shortly. I already have Sandy, who's agreed to speak in a little bit more detail about the diversion success story. So I realized that we're showcasing the Becker County information at a national level, and we haven't really had a chance to showcase it too much at the Minnesota level. So decided to have Sandy be a guest speaker, even though she's part of the team. So seeing some people chat. So let's see what those chats are. I just have just a couple more slides. Excellent. Great, great, great. Natalie's chatting too. Awesome. Great. And as far as what we're working on here in Minnesota, we are working on a number of things that support some of the developments that you've heard today. So, and we'll be showcasing this, like I said, at our next quarterly Built Environment meeting, where one of our next focuses, especially with this conference being over, and oh, awesome, awesome. Natalie from Rethos is willing to help co-promote. Oh, that's great. There's a few organizations I'm connected to that can do the same. I can also support. Yeah. Well, especially with the grant program happening, that can kind of jumpstart some of these conversations too. So, so here at the statewide level, we are focusing on creating some deconstruction ordinance templates, and we had a work group dedicated to helping us come up with some recommendations for how Minnesota can move forward on some of these developments. And one of the top recommendations was to create this ordinance templates. So what the template would be is a variety of different levels, so 3 different levels of engagement levels that cities can participate in implementing an ordinance within their own city. And so from our perspective, from the state perspective, it's voluntary, so cities can choose to implement these. Cities might even choose to implement these on a practice perspective and not necessarily a robust ordinance. And so it gives people flexibility and choice on within the city what the city leaders want to do. And I have not brought my day job into the city all that much, but I do have some personal connections within the city of St. Paul that I really would like to see some movement on some of these things. But those, I think, just need to take some time to build, just like within any city. So we'll be creating these ordinance templates. We are going to be working with a couple cities to kind of maybe demonstrate it or see what their thoughts are about it. And shortly after we start drafting those, we will be hosting a Green Steps Cities workshop where we can really talk about this ordinance and some of these other movements that are going on so that cities can become aware of what sort of movement is happening. And there's been a couple mentions at today's meeting where people have mentioned climate resiliency or solid waste master plans. And I'm starting to put together a matrix of which cities are Green Step cities, cities, which ones also have a climate resiliency plan, which ones have a solid waste master plan, and trying to build off of the cities and counties that already have these plans in place. Can we ask them to create an ordinance based on our template or take on other initiatives so that they can meet their already existing requirements within their city or county? So working with organizations that already have a focus on this, we think will be easier. And so we'll be hosting a statewide city-specific workshop. We'll be inviting the counties to participate if they would like. Obviously, none of this is required. Nobody has to attend, but we also want to make sure that counties are in the loop on some of these developments, especially if they do have cities within their county that do have either a Green Step Cities set of requirements or a climate resiliency plan, or choose to go forward with a deconstruction ordinance template. So try to be holistic as much as we can at that point. Any questions about that?
I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you guys are putting that in action. I would love to be there just from the county because I work closely with the cities. Yeah. When do you have a date for it yet?
I don't. My goal was January. I may have to push it back to February. And yeah, we'll be in touch. That'll be something shared in our newsletter for sure. And the Green Step Cities program coordinator is on board. So I did definitely reach out beforehand to secure that sort of thumbs up approval. So
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Melissa, I'd also wonder if you could include the Minnesota Main Streets communities in that matrix, which often are also Green Step cities. But through Rethos, we work within our Main Street network, which includes places like Northfield, to educate property owners about maintenance, rehab, and salvage opportunities too. So and a lot of times the Main Street staff is housed within city, economic development or planning staff. So there's a lot of overlap there. I can send you the link of our designated communities too.
That would be fantastic. And yes, it is one of those where I'm just trying to leverage the, not necessarily maximum partnerships, but, really work with organizations that already have this focus. So clearly the list that you're talking about would be extremely beneficial and probably overlapping. So yes, please. So we could use help with both of those developments. Nobody has to make any sort of commitment now, especially for those of you who are hearing some of this stuff for the first time. But we are starting to create subgroups for a lot of these topics. And part of them is based on what people in our work group, our stakeholder group that we had meetings for a year, people were interested in these topics and has expressed interest. So we're kind of restarting some subgroup topics and kind of just starting with one or two of these at a time. But thanks to the work that Rethos and Natalie is doing, we actually have deconstruction workshops coming up, and we would love to be able to have robust training in the future too once the funding can occur on that. Natalie, do you want to talk about the workshops?
Sure. So we've tried a couple different funding strategies or opportunities to get some substantial dollars to fund robust deconstruction training programs. And we're not quite there yet, but we did get a smallish grant from actually the National Trust for Historic Preservation to fund a series of 3 virtual workshops about deconstruction. Really trying to get information to a general audience, homeowners or small property owners who might actually take action and seek out a deconstruction or salvage opportunity. Also people who are, voters and active community members who might be able to advocate for deconstruction friendly policies in their own communities. So the way we're kind of framing it right now is hopefully to find a suitable case study in Minnesota that we can showcase the possibilities of deconstruction. Capturing data, videos, photography that can be shared over the course of a 3-part course series and really illustrate, what deconstruction could mean for our communities. And again, it's from a preservation-minded funder, which is really interesting and unique. And so we're also trying to make connections to rehabilitation and restoration, showing how, if we deconstruct and salvage materials from historic or older structures, we actually have then a much wider selection of materials to then use in rehabilitation or restoration of existing properties, trying to show how those two things are connected. Coming from the preservation world, there are a lot of people who don't believe deconstruction is a good thing, think it's the enemy, and we're trying to really show that no, deconstruction is a demolition alternative, not a preservation alternative. We can be shoulder to shoulder in this fight against throwing good materials in the trash. So yeah, we're going to be working alongside lots of you. I have good friends in this crew, so I want to make this a real team effort to roll out these classes next spring or summer. So many of you will be hearing from me as we continue planning that.
Yeah, I think it's a really great start, and I know we wanted to start bigger than this, but at the very least, we're getting the opportunity to normalize deconstruction, and especially with the two counties having their grants, we know that having the workforce to be able to deconstruct is also something that is a tension point. There's been some feedback that you need to make sure the supply of materials is available. Well, that means we need to have the supply of workers available. We also need a place for the materials to go. And to Kathy's point, materials from Kathy Osborne from Atomic Recycling, we need to make sure there's a market for these materials. And so there's a lot of competing things that are going on simultaneously that we are actually trying to balance all of them. We're not trying to start with just one, because I'll be honest, I feel like we have to start with multiple efforts at once, which makes it difficult, makes it very difficult, but I think we need to. So I think we need to have the worker supply and the material supply and the demand for reusing the materials all there. And to that topic, Olivia, Molly, and I are presenting a presentation that we've given slightly similar to other organizations. We're presenting to a Minnesota Architectural Conference this Thursday. And so architects are extremely interested in reused building materials. At least some of them are, and hopefully will inspire others. So there's that connection that we're getting involved in. So you already heard me talk about the marketplace development. We're working on having that nationwide, statewide mapping tool available. Both Olivia and Molly have put together great lists within their county and for materials, for resource marketplaces, resource matrices available, where you can find out who's a deconstruction contractor or a recycling company, or places that you can bring reused building materials to. And I'm committed to making sure that there is a statewide presence. There's a lot of organizations outside of the two main counties we've talked about quite a bit here today, and throughout the entire state, there's a dedication to salvaging and reuse. And so people won't know about that unless there's a place that they can go to find a list. And so having a mapping tool that is statewide is something I'm committed to. Kind of a newer development is that we actually here in the state of Minnesota at the Pollution Control Agency, we actually have a procurement lead, a person who's in charge of working with our Minnesota Department of Administration on contracts and purchasing. And that position had been vacant for a couple months as somebody, the person who was in this role, Melissa Peck, took a different job promotional opportunity at the MPCA. And that position just got backfilled yesterday with another MPCA employee. And I know this person, Allison. She is going to be a great fit for this particular role. And she'll be working with us to see how we can make Minnesota contracts, especially even the service side of things, more sustainable. And so we have an effort. We've been told that, if we can't get system-wide change statewide, we need to look at ourselves, at state government. We need to lead by example. And I've always agreed with that mentality. But I'm not in charge of Department of Administration. Nobody at the MPCA is in charge of, but we can work with them. And we can talk with them and see where we might be able to get them to highlight service contracts that might be more sustainable. We already have a purchasing book that highlights sustainable materials. Why don't we for services too? So we actually have an open door with Department of Administration to work on that, and that's something we've been working on off and on for about 6 months. A few of us, me not as much as others, so I'm just kind of giving you a high-level overview. But those are some of the developments that we're working on, and now that we have this contract procurement person filled, the vacancy filled, that activity should be really starting to ramp up quite a bit. So it's really kind of a nuanced thing that contracts for services have a sustainable lens, and it's not easy to do, especially when we do have an overarching large department that may not have the same goals we do and are just like a lot of other companies where it's about time and it's about money. That's not unique to us in the built environment. So this is a reality check for us that we have to convince other state employees that this is the right thing to do while they have so many other competing topics and priorities. So, you know, this gives us a real case study of what it's like to have to convince who we think are people empowered to do the right thing to do the right thing. But I totally respect that there's so many other interests and competing priorities that they have. So if anybody's interested in that, I don't know if anybody would, but just there's some opportunities to get involved if you like, because I know that at the city and county level, organization level, you may have some of the same challenges. And finally, we do have these quarterly built environment meetings where it'd be great to have a person or two help us out with either hosting or finding speakers. We've only had one so far, so we just started doing this in September. And our next quarterly meeting is on December 7th. And we're really well set, especially with people speaking up today, willing to present at that conference, at that next meeting. So we'll have Sandy from Becker County talk about the diversion project, have an overview of the Build Reuse Conference, and kind of talk about some of these topic-specific developments. So really good. We're letting people inside and outside of Minnesota attend. So we're taking kind of a concept that Region 9 EPA has down in California in the Bay Area. They have the Bay Area Deconstruction Workshop work group, and they also have some zero waste work groups. They're open to anybody, and we're also opening up ours so that we can learn from others and share with others outside of Minnesota. So that is my last slide. I think, well, officially, I guess I have one or two more, but I have put into chat a couple, at least once, a link for where you can sign up to receive updates. I can actually grab the link for the newsletter that was shared today. So we finally have it where we can share the link instead of people not being able to get access to it because it's already been sent. No problem, Peter. I'm glad you could join us today, and we should probably catch up and chat a little if you'd like to talk a bit more. So Peter and I do work together on some of the solid waste initiatives, and glad you could join us. So I'm going to throw this newsletter into chat again. It just got sent a little over an hour ago. So kind of fresh news here. I don't have anything more formal. I don't know if that worked. Yes, it did. We have to send our newsletters to the governor's office for review. That's new as of a couple months ago. And the information officer over at the governor's office said, I really like that doorknob. So Molly, you have people at the governor's office liking the picture that you have.
That's great news.
I don't get a lot of feedback. It's kind of a new process. I don't know if it's new since like our commissioner departed back in July, but I have not had to do this on a regular basis. And only once was there ever a comment about one article being a little bit more emotionally charged than they would like. So I swapped it out for something else. And yeah, so this is the only other comment I've ever received from the governor's office is that they like the doorknob. So if you want to know why the governor's office information officer likes this doorknob, then you'll have to read the newsletter. Let's see. Any last parting thoughts? We don't have to obviously take up the full 2 hours, but for those of you that maybe didn't have a chance to participate in the actual conference, What'd you think of this sort of debrief opportunity?
Well, I did go, but I think I should just say as a Green Corps member, I don't know if I'm speaking for all the Green Corps members, but speaking for myself as a Green Corps member, feeling like this world is a little bit new. And so every chance I have to build more context around what I'm learning, like this is so essential and so helpful. So it was really great to hear what everybody thought and what everyone's doing now past the conference. Thank you for sharing.
Excellent. Even as somebody who's been at the, I will silence myself. Sorry, I talk way too much.
It's okay. I was just going to say thanks for setting this up. I think it's really cool to see all the folks from Minnesota that were in the conference and recognize some names that I saw in the different attendee webinars. But yeah, I'm going to try to go back and watch different recordings for sessions that I was interested in going to that I maybe couldn't. So yeah, hopefully stay connected with everyone and a good chance to kind of recap from the conference because I know my head was spinning for a few days after with all the information.
Excellent. Great. If it seems like a good opportunity, I might do something more casual like this, not 2 hours, of course, but, you know, we'll have our formal quarterly meeting and, you know, maybe once a quarter, a 1 hour check-in on stuff like this. We'll see. We'll see. I don't want to overwhelm people with meetings, especially if they're not helpful, but in the fact that most of us are still having to work from home or work outside of the traditional workplace, you know, being able to network and connect, I think is important. And it was kind of brought to me that those that might be new to the environmental field, to the built environment, they may not have the opportunity that some of us seasoned workers had for networking. And so that really struck a chord when I heard that remote working may be a challenge for those that are new in the workforce. And so I'm kind of doubling down and making sure that I can provide space and opportunities to connect. And obviously it doesn't just mean people new to the workforce. It could be people new to the topic or people who normally don't get a chance to connect in this way. So regardless of the reason, I'm trying to make more networking space available within my control, if I have control over it, and if it's relatable. And again, us building relationships one another, I think will only strengthen the work that we're doing to achieve the goals we're working on. So I feel pretty strongly about that, if you couldn't tell. Great. Well, I'll be happy to share the recording of this with folks. And so folks that were not able to participate in your workplaces, feel free to share it with them. And I've shared the newsletter. I've shared the link so people can see the presentations. Am I missing anything? Am I forgetting something? Excellent. Okay, I'm a geek. I just had to do that because I felt pretty excited that I was able to upload a soundbite like that. Really easy to do, but still.
Better put your dancing bit on now.
Yeah.
Dance on out.
Dance with my cat.
Go.
While we're waiting for the last session to start, the moderator had some music and I was dancing, and yes, it got recorded. It hasn't been shared yet. They did clip that out of the final presentation. So, and I don't dance well, so yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So you're welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you could all join us today. Again, yes, congratulations, Hennepin County, for a well-deserved award. Congratulations to Ramsey County for initiating their grant program. Congratulations to Becker County for their award-winning diversion program. And congratulations to all of you for the part you're taking. And just even learning about this is a step in the right direction. So let's stay in touch. Bye, everybody.